Hola, gracias a todos por estar aquí, bienvenidos. Para nosotros en nuestras empresas, Axxiontrade, HT Asesores, es un gusto participar en proyectos con instituciones tan serias y tan prestigiadas como la Universidad Hebraica, en eventos que aporten algo a la sociedad, que nos traigan nuevas ideas, cosas que están alejadas de la realidad que vivimos todos los días. Les damos la bienvenida, les agradecemos estar con nosotros y a la Hebraica gracias por invitarnos a ser parte de esto. Y para no hacerlo muy largo, los dejamos con Jackie Goren para que nos dé una conferencia que esperemos sea muy interesante. Gracias.
Perdón, antes de Jackie, le pido por favor a área, que es el presidente del Comité Ejecutivo de la Universidad Hebraica, que nos dirija unas palabras. Y después nuestro rector le va a presentar a Jackie su currículum y podemos empezar con el programa.
Buenas tardes a todos. La motivación que tenemos en la Universidad Hebraica de hacer este tipo de eventos es vincular la academia con la empresa. Creemos que la academia puede servir al mundo de la empresa y al mundo de las organizaciones, de tal manera que no solamente desde el punto de vista formativo, sino de alguna manera también en la vinculación que pueden ejercer las empresas, los empresarios y las instituciones educativas. Y es esa la vinculación en donde queremos la Universidad Hebraica estar participando, porque creemos que es una manera de encontrar soluciones que fomenten el desarrollo y el crecimiento, tanto del país como inclusive de la comunidad. Le quiero agradecer especialmente a León y a su equipo por habernos dado la oportunidad de tener este evento. Y León, en su tiempo, tanto empresario como voluntario, dedica muchas horas y mucho interés a estas causas. También quiero agradecer a los amigos de la Universidad Hebraica y a todos los colaboradores que tenemos en la Universidad Hebraica que se dedican a los detalles para que este tipo de eventos hagan perfectamente y como lo esperamos. Esperemos que Jackie de veras nos brinde sus insights y que nos podamos llevar aquí a la casa algo interesante. Muchas gracias.
Bueno, finalmente Yahuda Shalom, que es el rector de la Universidad Hebraica. Gracias.
Antes que lea lo que tengo preparado acá, nada más no tengo más que agregar a lo que Adi, nuestro presidente ejecutivo, dijo, pero sí estoy muy emocionado porque tuve una plática con León hace mucho tiempo y tenemos que hacer cosas, y ahora que en la última época nos está ayudando tanto y creando eventos así y openings, y estoy muy de acuerdo con Adi de que tenemos mucho que enseñar, sobre todo el tema de emprendedurismo que entra en universidades. De hecho, en la Universidad de Tel Aviv, de donde Jackie viene, si estás estudiando filosofía o historia o teología o ingeniería, te tomas estos créditos de innovación, porque innovación es un state of mind, no es tecnología alta o un emprendedurismo económico nomás. Es que ves algo en el mundo que no te gusta y decidís cambiarlo. Y platiqué con Jackie comiendo y me comentó, al principio ella estudiaba medicina, después de 3 años tomó la decisión de cambiar carrera a ser abogada y de ahí tal vez MBA, y así se desarrolló como esta gran inversionista y una persona que enseña de inversionismo con impacto social. Y eso es muy israelí, muy emprendedor, que en Israel no nos asustamos si alguien hace cambios en su carrera, se reinventa, aprende de sus errores, hace cosas nuevas, es parte del emprendedurismo israelí que queremos dar a México. Y ahora, si me permiten, lo oficial. Jackie Goren dirige la Global Consulting Concentration en la Coller Business School de la Universidad de Tel Aviv y es profesora adyacente en las áreas de consultoría de negocios globales e inversión de impacto, que quiere decir profesora catedrática. Cuenta con amplia experiencia desempeñándose como leading thought leader en el ecosistema israelí de inversión e impacto social, y ella va a explicar eso. Jackie tiene más de 25 años de experiencia en gestión de inversiones. Fue directora del primer y segundo fondo de inversión de impacto de Israel, Tandem y Yozma, respectivamente, así como directora del primer corporate VC, Cursi VC, donde administró más de 100 millones de dólares estadounidenses, USD, e invirtió en más de 40 startups e impact ventures con un valor total de salida de más de 400 millones de USD. Tiene una licenciatura en los estudios médicos de la Universidad Hebraica, está formada como abogada de la Universidad de Tel Aviv y tiene un Executive MBA conjunto con, muchos de ustedes lo conocen, la Universidad Northwestern Kellogg School of Management y Recanati School of Management. Jackie, es un placer.
Okay, buenos días. Thank you very much for all the, I don't know what you said, but I hope it was nice. I'm here only for 3 days, so I don't know much Spanish, unfortunately. So I will give this talk in the English, and if anybody wants help in translation, so you can approach Norma or somebody else that will help you with the translator, okay? So in the next 45 minutes or so, I will share with you my journey as an investor, moving from being a traditional investor into an impact investor, and I will share with you some new ideas about, and innovative ideas, I would say, about how to finance social issues and why it is important, okay? So let me start, if it's okay with you. So, if I had to pinpoint one area in my life in which I became an expert, it would probably be investment management. Over the last 30 years, I was busy chasing this animal, unicorns. Does all of you know what unicorns means in the investment world? No. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, investors, regular investors, are looking to find the next unicorn. A unicorn is a company that reaches the value of $1 billion, and this is why it's very unique, and you don't see many of those. And it's usually a disruptive company. It means that it's a company that changed the way things are, that after they exist, things are not anymore the way they were. I guess Waze was a unicorn when we think about Israel. Google is a unicorn. Facebook is a unicorn. WeWork now has become a unicorn. All of those companies are unicorns, and usually investors, like I used to be, when companies come to us, we look at what they are promising, and we try to see and identify whether or not they are unicorns. So I was for 30 years chasing for those animals. I was chasing for unicorns. I don't know why. When I get close there, I think that's what's making it happen. So if somebody can turn off this microphone, it will be good. Continue? Okay. Back in the 90s, I was working for Israel's largest holding company, and that was even before the high-tech bubble, as we call it, began to swell, to grow. And that was even before this book. I don't know if you are familiar with it, Startup Nation, which now everyone are talking about Israel as a startup nation. So that was even before this book, Startup Nation, was written. So it was just the beginning. And Core, the company I was working for, they were traded in New York Stock Exchange, and they very quickly realized that there is a lot of potential in this high-tech sector, and they decided to establish Israel's first corporate VC. Corporate VC is like a venture capital, but it's within a corporate, within a company that exists, and the money comes from the balance sheet of this company and not from shareholders from the outside. So they decided to establish the first corporate VC in order for investors in the world to start to enjoy the high tech that is growing in Israel. Back then I was working for this company, as I mentioned, and I was mainly busy doing traditional low-tech complicated transactions and investments. And I was very happy for the opportunity that was given to me to join this new and exciting sector. So I joined the fund first as a deal maker. I was in charge of doing the transactions. And I have to share with you that what I saw and what I experienced when I moved to this sector, I was actually shocked. That was very, very strange to me. I was meeting day in, day out, very, very young entrepreneurs, very young, who had amazing big dreams. They had no management experience, and sometimes they didn't even have any business plan that they came with. And they were entering the room, and they were presenting to us sometimes very mediocre presentations, not that great. And many times they were living with a $1 million check that somebody wrote for them. And I will give you some examples. For example, on the right here, you see the name Camelot, right? You all know what Camelot is. So one guy, very young, came to us and tried to convince us that we need to invest a few $1 million in his company, and $1 million will go for him to buy the name of this company, the trademark, so it will be his. Needless to say that it was a B2B business, and this company was closed 12 months later. Or another, amazing, nice young man entered the room, and he tried to convince us that toilets for cats, that was his business, is going to be a bigger business than Apple. You see the cat sitting there on the toilet. So that was his vision. Okay. So these are some of the people I met and some of the ideas that I was exposed to. The investors, they also puzzled me. I mean, the VCs, the venture capital investors that I met, they were very smart and experienced people. And I was puzzled by the fact that they were willing to give money to businesses that didn't have any income, okay, because it was just paper and dreams, and sometimes didn't have any business plan. As long as the dream that the entrepreneurs were selling them were big, and the cash flow, the burn rate, was even bigger. Not the cash flow, the burn rate. I don't know if you're familiar with the term burn rate, but burn rate is how much money the company burns every month, not earns every month. And back then, in 2000, if a company didn't burn enough money every month, it was a sign that it's doing something wrong. Because we thought that if you burn a lot of money very quickly, that means that you move very quickly. So this is how the high-tech sector in the beginning in Israel operated, okay? And then, yes?
Could you move your microphone up to front?
To move my microphone. This is better? Yes, I'm sorry, I was not aware of it. Okay, and then came the year 2002. Some of you are young, I don't know if you remember, but for the older people, I think we all remember 2002. That was when the first high-tech bubble, exploded. And everything just collapsed all of a sudden. And you can see here in the graph, on the right side, this is what happened to the stock market in 2002, mainly the communication sector and the high-tech sector. And to me, this situation actually created an opportunity. There were many changes in the company, and you know that opportunities, there is a research that says that for women, always opportunities come when there is bad situation in the market. So for me, I moved from opportunity to opportunity every time when there were bad things. So we keep it in mind. So I became the CEO of this fund at that very particular time. And that was a whole new ballgame, as they say in the United States. Shareholders like myself, all of a sudden, we had to deal with firing employees of companies and with selling equipment and figuring out what to do with technology that all of a sudden we realized that it didn't have any meaning whatsoever. And what was very disappointing is that the entrepreneurs that just a few months before were selling us, you know, these big dreams, and were earning, I'm talking about 20 years ago, almost 20 or 30,000 US dollars per month at the age of 23, 24. So all of a sudden, when we asked them, you know, maybe to cut down their salary or to dilute their holdings in the company because of the situation, they just vanished. So we found ourselves having to deal with all of that. I was managing this fund for 6 years. It was very tough. At the end, it took a lot of effort, but we managed to pay back the investment. We didn't do huge exits, but we paid back the investments. I was flying high these years, but I was 42 in 2008, and I was tired. And my kids were a bit older, and I was lucky, and I had the opportunity to take a break, and I decided that I want to spend some time and to think what is the next thing that I want to do. I didn't quite understand what you said, but I think that it has to do with what you said, because for me it was clear that it's okay in the middle life to change my career. So I started to look around, and the context was 2008. I guess most of you also remember what happened in 2008, right? Financial crisis all over the world, again, not very good situation. And in Israel, that was a transition period in 2008. Actually, for a decade before 2008, Israel moved or changed from being a very socialist country. In the beginning, Israel was like an ultra-socialist country, you know, the kibbutzim, and to becoming an ultra-capitalist country. With all the good things and the bad things that are coming with such a transition. And also, Israel then joined the OECD, the organization that compares between the developed countries. And all of a sudden, information started to flow in. And this is what, I realized, and all of us realized, that actually Israel is two Israels. Actually, there are two Israels in Israel. One Israel that I guess you are hearing a lot about, and you're talking a lot about, the startup nation Israel with all the technology and innovation and money and progressive. But there is a second Israel in Israel. There is this Israel that suffers from a very, very high poverty rate, and with one of the biggest gaps between poor and rich from all of the OECD countries. I don't know if you know it, but these are the two Israels that exist together, and I know that Mexico is very similar. Mexico is a huge country, so I think that maybe you can not be exposed to it in your day-to-day life because you have your community, but in Israel, which is a small country, when you have that, it influences everything because it's a very small community. There are only 8 or 9 million people. People are always saying to me when I show these figures, and I don't have the time to go all through it now, oh yes, but if maybe it will sound terrible to you, but people are saying to me, if you exclude Arabs and ultra-Orthodox, the picture will be different, okay? Because the ultra-Orthodox in Israel don't work, and the Arabs are different sectors, so it will be different. But the truth is, and I can prove it to you in figures and numbers if you would like, is that even if you exclude Arabs and ultra-Orthodox from the figures, still Israel suffers from poverty, from big gaps, education level that is actually reducing. Our PISA and grades are not that great as they used to. So we have a problem. And when I was looking at those figures when I was in my break, remember? So I was thinking to myself, how can it be that all of this innovation and money is not directed into solving these problems? And how can it be that the usual suspects, the ones that are supposed to solve the problems, right, who is usually supposed to solve these problems?
The government.
Government and philanthropists. So the government and philanthropists, they're not solving it. The gaps are just growing and growing and growing. On one hand, there is all of this money, and the gaps are growing, and the government is not becoming richer and don't have more money to solve the problem. And the philanthropists the people are becoming richer, still don't contribute enough money to solve these problems. Okay? So I was starting to think about it, and maybe I will take a short break to talk about myself, because maybe you're thinking, why all of a sudden I became interested in poverty and in social gaps. I was managing a fund and I was in business, etc., etc. So I think maybe I'll share with you a bit about the way I grew up. I grew up in Jerusalem, and my father was a sculptor, my mother was a painter, and I must say that there was nothing mainstream about the way I grew up, and our socioeconomic was not that great ever, although our education was good. And I think that being an outsider growing up allowed me always to identify with other outsiders. I felt the contrary. I felt very deep in my bones that social disparities is not a problem of somebody else. It's the problem of all of us. Because when I wanted to help, I never felt like I'm helping somebody else. I think inside I felt that this problem, it can happen to me. I could be in this place. I'm maybe a little bit selfish. I want to solve a problem because I don't want this problem to be my problem. I don't know if it makes sense. So this is like a little bit about my motivation. So I had these questions. Why don't we see more innovation and more money being directed into solving social problems? Okay? So with this question in mind, I went to study and learn and try to understand. And then it became even more clear to me, because I'm an investor, right? I'm looking at things from the point of view of an investor. And when I looked at it deeper, I realized that the heart of the problem is that as an investor, usually what you're looking for is that the risk-return equation will work for you, right? We know that we can put money in the bank and get very small interest, and we put money in the bank for small interest because we think that it is not risky, okay? So the equation is balanced. And then we put money in high-tech and startups, and we know that the risk is very big, but we are anticipating that maybe the reward will be very big. We think that we will find a unicorn, as I told you before. So we are also willing to put money there. But when the risk-reward equation is not balancing, as an investor, I will not invest because I don't want to put money and know that even if it will be good, I will not cover for my risk. So then I thought, okay, I need to find formulas, to look for formulas, to develop formulas in order to balance this equation. And to find a way to incentivize investors, because this is where the money is. in the business world. It's not, the government is not becoming richer, and philanthropists are not donating more and more because philanthropy, the truth is that philanthropy is losing money, right? You give money and it's not coming back to you. So you look at, from investment perspective, you look at it as, giving up money. So I try to think of ways, or to develop ways of balancing this equation. And this idea, so actually I was searching for a new kind of unicorns. I wanted to find a way to invest and build and create these kind of unicorns, which I called social impact unicorns, okay? And that was a very nice idea, but you know that ideas are nothing, and you need to find the right people to team in order to exercise, to create reality from your ideas and not just to keep them in your mind. So I teamed up with a group of people that made their fortune in the high tech. They are called IVN, Israel Venture Network. And they also noticed the disparities, the social disparities in Israel, and they thought that their business background could help them, solve this problem. So we found a common language, which we thought that we see things similarly. And we decided that in order for us, first of all, we wanted to see if there are social businesses, which means businesses that are trying to solve social problems, but are generating income, and we wanted to show that maybe the risk-reward equation that we were so afraid of, maybe it's not that risky. So we decided that what we need to do is to establish a fund. And we decided to establish a small fund. Because we didn't know to evaluate the risk, the first fund came from philanthropists. The money came from philanthropists, not from investors, because they were not willing to invest yet. It was too risky for them. And we promised these investors, or to ourselves first, that we want to show, to demonstrate, or to reach 3 goals in this fund, small fund. One, we wanted to show that if we give what we called social businesses loans, we will get the loans back plus interest, and that shows that it's not so risky. Second, we wanted to demonstrate that this social business that we give money to can become sustainable, that they will not need philanthropy again and again and again and again. That if we will give them money, that will help them develop business around what they do, so the philanthropists can give their money in other places. They will not need to continue and support these businesses. And the third thing that we wanted to prove was, of course, that they create social impact, right? Because if we just give money to businesses and they do business, so we didn't do anything. We want them to create social impact. And to the philanthropists that were willing to give us the money, we promised that this fund is going to be what we call an evergreen fund, which means that we will give the money to ventures, and then they will pay us back, and then we will recycle it. We will give it again and again. We are not distributing money because philanthropists cannot get back their money, right, because they get their tax exemption, but we will create impact. So we told them, you give us $1, and we promise you, first, we are not going to ask you more dollars for these ventures, because they will be sustainable. And second, the $1 that you gave us, we will get it back and we will give it to another venture, so it will create an impact of at least $2.50 over a period of 10 years. That was our vision, but we had no idea if it would work, of course. It was just a vision. So after we got the money, we started to look for ventures, right? For the ventures that we wanted to invest in. And this time, not like the first journey that I told you of starting to invest in regular for-profit startup companies. This journey, I actually met amazing, inspiring, enthusiastic, smart people. And I would like to share some of the ideas and some of the people that I met, okay? Neta was a criminal prosecutor in her experience, and she traveled the world, and she realized that there is connection between economic development of poor places and tourism. So she decided that she wanted to see if she can transform Israel's poorest Arab village, which is called Jisr al-Zamka. It's really next to Caesarea. And she opened a guest house. But she didn't just open the guest house because her goal was to change the entire ecosystem of the village. So she measured her success not just by how many people sleep in the guest house, how much money they live in the guest house, etc., but also how many people open other businesses in the village and how much money the people that come to the village are spending in the village. And she also understood, and I think that this is something that many people that are weak understand, that in order for them to become strong, they need to work together. So in a village like that, businesses cannot compete. They need to cooperate and they need to incentivize people to come and spend money in all of the businesses. So she did that, and I must say that now, a few years later, there are around 15,000 people that are entering this village every year. Not all of them sleep in the guest house. There are a few other guest houses there already. Restaurants were open, women are cooking, and just yesterday they told me that they opened a hub, a high-tech hub, in this guest house, not in the guest house, in the village. So this is a real transformation, right? And the loan that we gave this social business in the beginning was repaid for us in total, and actually they don't need any more philanthropy. And if they get loan donations, it's for new ideas and new things, but not for their ongoing activity. So this is the story of Neta. Another story is of Rabbi David Liebe. I don't know, you know him? No. So I don't know, in Israel there is this situation that ultra-Orthodox young men are not usually working, although sometimes they want to work and sometimes they even need to work. They don't work because the stigma of their society is that if you're smart, you need to be in the yeshiva, and you need to stay there. And if you go to work, the society doesn't appreciate the fact that you went to work. So he realized that this is the issue, and he said, what if I could open within the yeshiva a workplace that will first teach the yeshiva guys how to become computer programmers, and then will employ them. And that's exactly what he did. He opened a company called Ravte. It's in the yeshiva, so the students are, the young men are coming to the yeshiva, they study in the yeshiva until midday. In the afternoon, in the first few months, they study computer programming and website building and all kind of tech things. And after 9 months, I think, of education, they actually have a business in which they work and they earn money. And actually the person who runs this business is a woman who is not religious at all. And it was so successful that they now opened a second branch. The first branch was in Bnei Brak, in Israel. And now they opened the second branch in Jerusalem. So this is very successful, and this is a mindset. We were talking about innovation and mindset. The mindset of the David Liebe, the entrepreneur, was I need to find to build a workplace that will meet the requirements of the employees. Not I want to open a workplace and I want to get employees. No, my first goal is to find a way to employ these people, and I will adjust the workplace for them. Is that clear? You're all looking at me like, Okay. I will continue. One of the first people I met when I started this journey looking for the ventures to invest in was Nachman over there. Nachman had back then a non-for-profit organization in Tel Aviv Hospital, a big hospital in Israel. And his mission in life was to help people that became handicapped because of illnesses or accidents or things like that, to find the right accessories, assistive technology, that will help them to cope with everyday life, okay? And maybe I can show a small movie, because I don't know if you realize that if somebody becomes handicapped, it's much more than the wheelchair that they need. Sometimes it's, you know, how you eat, how you cut your food, so I will show, and then I will drink a sip of water, like a small movie of the things that Nachman used to do, okay? Oh, but this is not working. It's working or not? Okay. This is very good. Okay, so this is like, can you start from the beginning? Move it from this one, from the beginning. This just shows you, what it makes to pour salad, okay? That you need something specific for that, or to cut bread, or to, all kinds of things that you don't even need them, to drink, to brush your teeth, to wash dishes, to feed your baby, all kinds of little things that people need in order to be able to live when they became handicapped. And God forbid, each one of us can, be in this situation. It's something that happens to people during their lifetime. Can you go back? So Nachman realized very quickly that there are many needs that are not met, that companies are not producing. They are not producing all of these solutions. He couldn't find it in the market. So he gathered a group of volunteers, mainly engineers and product designers, etc. And their goal was to build ad hoc solutions for the people to use. So they built many, many ad hoc solutions. And when I came to visit Nachman's facility, I saw rooms and rooms full of solutions. And he told me, many times I think that the solutions could help many people, not just the 1 or 2 people that I'm helping. But I don't have the money to bring it into the market. I can share the presentation with you afterwards, so you don't need to. So he said, I don't have the money because the philanthropists are not, they don't know how to give money to R&D development, to marketing, to business development, because this is what I need in order to take this product from the shelf and bring it to the market. And the investors are not willing to invest in this because the market of each product is very small, relatively small. Maybe it can help 10,000 people, maybe it can help 100,000 people, but this is not big enough market in order for the investors at this risk to create unicorns. So investors are not putting money. So actually he had all of these solutions that could help all of these people, and he couldn't bring the solutions to the people. And he was right. I mean, it was too risky. Even for IVN, it was too risky. So back then, I started to teach at Tel Aviv University, and I teach MBA students, and we had a workshop for management consulting. So I went to my students, and I asked them, this is the challenge. Maybe we can think together and come up with a solution of how we can create a situation that will allow Nachman to get money to bring his products to the market. So it took us two semesters to think about it, and then another 2 years to make it happen. But eventually, we managed to convince Israel Innovation Authority. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but in Israel, We have Innovation Authority that gives a lot of money to support innovation and high tech, and we convinced them and the Social Security of Israel that it would be a smart move to allocate money to support companies that are developing services or products that can help people that suffer from disabilities that represent less than 5% of the population, the small groups. So by doing that, actually from investment point of view, what did they do? They decided to put $600,000 per venture like this, after they checked it, etc., etc. And actually they reduced dramatically the risk for investors. And after they did that and they put the money, so actually it became more attractive to investors to put money because they reduced the risk. They balance the equation, exactly. And therefore, because of this program, Nachman and many other companies, and I think dozens of products now are being produced in Israel and getting finance from regular investors, that their risk is being mitigated by this fund of the government, and they are getting into the market. And it becomes so successful that even one of Nachman's products got financed by Israel sharks. I heard that you all also have it here. The sharks, which are really not social, so they found it attractive enough to invest in one of the products. And if we have time, I want to show you a small movie about the new kind of products that this new way of financing is allowing to grow, which is very interesting. Okay, you need to come again. What I want you to see. Okay, this one, it's working. Just take it down. Okay.
I want to be a firefighter when I grow up. My mom says it's too dangerous, but I think it's only dangerous if there's a fire. I was born 12 weeks before my expected birth date. Is 1.9 pounds heavy or light? I want to speak, but the words remain inside me. People just don't understand me. My name is Ray. I'm 5 years old. And tomorrow, I will start speaking freely.
Okay, so this is a company that IVN invested in and actually managed to raise $10 million. Half of it was not diluted and half of it was for profit completely. And they develop algorithm that learns the language of each of these people that, and it can happen with people that have a brain, how do you call it, that are born like this. What?
Speech impediment.
Speech impediment because of, stroke. Or my father had a stroke, okay? And after he had a stroke, the only people that could understand him was the immediate family, because we listened to him all the time and we made a lot of effort to understand him. What the technology is doing is actually what the immediate family is doing. They make a lot of effort to understand him and they manage to translate the speech into a speech that everyone understands. So now people can go with this computer to a restaurant and order food. They can go and buy things in the supermarket. They can talk to people that don't understand them and make them understandable. So this is a product of a new way of financing that allow a blended model of financing of people that are looking for impact and people that are looking, like the government, for example, and people that are looking for return on investment. And without these structures, these kind of solutions would not come into the world because they're not lucrative enough. Tandem Fund, I told you about the fund that was based on philanthropy. So the end of it was that we invested in 15 companies out of which 14 still exist. They all repaid the money that we gave them. Even the one that closed repaid the money before they closed. They are all sustainable now, and they don't need any more philanthropy at all. They all create impact. And one more thing that I learned from that is that these businesses went through hard times, right? It's not that it was like, a walk in the park. But when they had the hard times, none of the entrepreneurs vanished. They all stayed and coped and managed to overcome this situation. And actually, after I noticed it, I read research that was done about it in England, and it turned out that companies that has social goals tend to be more resilient than companies that are just for maximizing profit. Okay? So that's what we learned from this fund. So after we were successful with this fund, but I told you this came from philanthropist money, we started to move to the next step. And this is when I met this person over there, Dr. Gil Winch, his name, and he's a psychologist, and he noticed the phenomena that people with disabilities, even if they're educated and intelligent, in Israel, their employment rate is very, 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 very low. And many of them stay at home and don't work at all, and that creates a burden on the society and on their families, and it costs a lot of money for the government. And he investigated this, and he learned that in family businesses, many times they are working, these people, not because the family is managing the business different, and that allows them to work. So he decided that he wanted to open a business that will imitate the way family businesses are working, and he wanted to make a point and to show that his company, a for-profit company, can employ people that nobody else will be willing to employ, severe disabilities, and at regular salary. Okay, so again, a mindset. And he opened a call center, by the way, I need to, call center, and he opened the call center not because he had any knowledge about call centers, but he thought call center is something that you measure everything, right? You know how many calls they're answering and what is the success rate of the sales and everything. So he said, if I will manage to demonstrate my point in a call center, it will be clear-cut. There will be no, arguments if I'm successful or not. It will be clear-cut. And again, it's a mindset, because he wanted to be able to employ these people, and he opened the business in order to employ them. He didn't open a call center and looked for cheap labor. He did exactly the opposite way around. But again, he couldn't find money for his business, right? Because the philanthropists will not give money for a for-profit. They don't get tax exemption, and they don't trust it, they don't give money. And investors didn't want to give money because they didn't understand what's the risk there. They thought it's too risky, and also they thought if it doesn't work and we need to fire people with disabilities, it doesn't look good. And we will say that we are, doing some horrible things, so they didn't want to put money. And the government was also a little bit suspicious about this new idea. And he couldn't find money to finance his idea. And again, the risk-reward equation did not balance, right? So, okay. So again, I went to my students to think, how can we solve it? And this is when I told my students the story of how the high-tech sector, the venture capital in the high-tech sector in Israel started. Does anybody here know the story of what happened? Okay, I'll tell you. In the 80s, startups started to grow in Israel. Mainly people went from the army outside, came with ideas, started to build companies, but there was no money to invest in it. There was no venture capital ecosystem at all. And investors and people who had money were very hesitant to invest because they couldn't understand the risk attached to this investment because there was no results of, success stories or anything like that. So the government of Israel was very smart, and they were thinking outside of the box. And they said, what if we will allocate they decided to allocate $100 million to establish 10 funds. And they approached people that had some experience in managing funds and told them, look, take the money, you will manage the fund, but there is one term attached to it. I give you $10 million, you need to bring matching fund of $10 million. But in order for you to be able to bring this money, because the risk is very big, that's the deal we are going to give to the investors, the government said. If the fund will be very successful, so the investors will get first their money plus very high interest, and only then the government will take back their money. But if the fund will lose money and will not be successful, so then only after the government write off their entire investment, only then the investors will start losing money. That means that a $10 million fund, only after it becomes $5 million, 50% is, only then the investors start to lose money. Until then, it's only the government. So by reducing the risk by 50%, it was attractive to investors to come in. They managed very quickly to raise these 10 funds. They were called Yozma funds. And they were very successful. And after the first round, the government didn't need to do it anymore because there was already a market and investors were already invested. And that's the story of the venture capital market of Israel. Everyone in Israel knows this story. So when I told this story to my students, they said, what if we could establish social Yozma? Something similar, but for the social impact sector. So it was a good idea. I went with it to the government. Again, it took a few more years, but they loved it so much that they adopted it as if it was their own idea. And they came up with a tender for 2 funds, 2 Yozma funds. The total of the money was 50 million shekels, out of which half came from the government and half they wanted the managers to bring the money, but not just from, some of it was from philanthropic money, but they asked that at least 30% of the fund will come from investors, real investors. And this is where the big wow was, because I was asked to raise this money from real investors in that very short time, 3 months. And I said, how can I raise 15 million shekel in 3 months? That's very tough. But because of the right structure that balanced the equation, actually it was the easiest money I raised in my life. It was really quick. I raised it from a bank, I raised it from endowment fund, not the interest of the endowment fund, the endowment fund itself of the Jewish Federation in New York, and from other investors. So again, by doing that, they managed to change the equation and to create attractiveness of investors, real investors, to put money. The fund's purpose was to invest, was to invest mainly in businesses that employ people with disabilities, with child at risk, people that suffer from all kinds of issues. And from that money, we invested in Gil, in the call center that I told you about before. That was 4 years ago. And today, 4 years later, so Gil business doubled in size. Currently, he employs 220 employees, out of which about 85% are people with disabilities. He's profitable, and he is not getting any support from philanthropy whatsoever. All the money is self-generated money. He pays the employees regular market salary, like all the call centers in Israel, not a penny less. And he's starting the journey of maybe opening a second branch in the United States, because many people from all over the world are coming to learn this model and want to duplicate it because it's working. It's just working. So IVN won the Yozma Fund, the tender that I told you about, and we invested in 10 ventures, and already some of the money that we invest, we are paying back to our investors, because the ventures are paying back money and we are paying back to the investors. And we managed to prove that social business can be profitable. This is what we started our journey with. That social business can be sustainable. They lived at least for 7 years. That investors will invest in social businesses if the risk-reward balance is right, and that the blended models that are comprised of money from government, philanthropy, and investors are the right models for that. So that's my story. I want to, how much time do we still have?
20, 30 minutes.
Okay. Okay, so far does anybody have, because the rest of the time I wanted to allocate to talk about a few more models that are out there, not ones that I did, but I'm involved with or I know of. And also to talk to you a little bit about the impact investment market in general, because I think that this is terminology that you need to open up to, because this is something that is starting to grow. But before I continue, any questions so far? Yes?
So you find that the experience with working with the government for this type of programs, I mean, the government is willing to support them, the government, how was the approach to the government?
In Israel. The government, I think that the change that the government went through, I mean, the traditional approach of the government of Israel was very different between how they approached high-tech sector, which their approach was very innovative. They were willing to take a lot of risks and to pour a lot of money in order to grow this market. And when it comes to social problems or welfare, so the approach was completely the opposite. Suspicious, not believing, thinking that, you know, these people are parasites, they're taking the money, The government liked these models. Because these models, and when I will talk about social impact bonds, it's even more, these models are not giving money to the poor in a way, but it's giving money to middlemen that are creating sustainability. And that's actually what everyone wants. I mean, I think everyone wants it. The people with disabilities don't want to be supported all day. They want to have a workplace that will be able to employ them and to get salaries. The government doesn't want it. The philanthropist doesn't want all the time, you know, to give and give and give and give and forever. Of course, there are some areas in which it will always be philanthropy. I'm not saying that this will replace everything. But I think that in areas that it's possible to create sustainable businesses, this is a win-win-win situation for everyone. Okay, so I'm not saying that, you know, we need to stop being philanthropic and we don't need to give money to the poor anymore. Yes, we do, but I think that there are other ways. And also I think that what's interesting in this approach is that the previous approach that says, you know, business is one set of rules, one set of even legislation, and philanthropy is completely different, and you separate it altogether. Today, we're starting to talk about blended models, and that's not just money, blended money, it's also blended mindset. More questions? Okay. So I will give another example of that you need, I think, to know. And I read that there is already one here in Mexico, which is called social impact bonds. Anybody heard of social impact bonds? You heard? You want to? I do hear.
I know the other ones.
What? You know the other ones?
The regular ones.
Yes.
Will you meet with somebody from the government?
I would love to. Yes. You think it will be good for in Mexico too?
What?
Yes. Okay, so let's do it. Social impact bonds. Again, the problem was that there are many non-for-profit organizations. Some of them are doing very good jobs, but but first of all, it's hard to measure which one is good and which one is, just take their money and waste it. And also, many times, even the good ones need to work so hard in finding money all the time, so they don't always have the time and resources to actually do what they have to do, which is, to support and to solve problems. So this idea of social impact bonds actually grew up in England by another Jew, Sir Ronald Cohen. I don't know if you heard of him. Sir Ronald Cohen is an Englishman. Actually, he was the one who established the biggest private equity funds in the world, Apex. And after that, he became social investor, and he came up with this idea. And this idea started in recidivism of people that there is problem, I don't know if here, but in Israel and in England, people that go to jail, right? After they come out of jail, high percent go back to jail. It's like, rolling doors, out, in, out, in. Jail is very expensive, and we pay for it, right? Because the country pays for the jails. Nobody. So he went to the English government and he said, you know that each person in jail costs you this and this amount of pounds a month. And you know that the percentage of people that are going back to jail is, let's say, 70%. So you know exactly how much money you pay for each 10 people that leave the jail. You know that you need to pay X money. I am willing to find the best and non-for-profit that knows to do the best job of preventing these people to go back from jail. And I will commit that I will reduce the rate of people coming back to jail by 50%. So instead of 70% coming back to jail, I will demonstrate that only 35% of the people that I take care of, 50% are going back to jail, okay? The government said, yes, that's a good idea, but what about money? And Sir Ronald Cohen said, don't care, I don't worry about money. I will find money to do it because I trust that I can do it. But if I'm successful, you will share with me the profit that I created to you. So actually, you will pay me back the cost that you saved by doing this exercise. And the money that the government actually paid for it was good money with very good return on investment because it saved a lot of money. So actually, this is what a social impact bond is. It's a new financial model that creates a situation in which the government or other organizations that want to do it are paying only on results. So they're happy because they don't need to spend money unless results happen. The non-for-profits are happy because they get money to do their job and they don't need to run all the time for money. The mediator, the funds that organize it, are happy because they know that they will find the good ventures and they will measure the success and they will get good return on investment if they know how to manage it well. So social impact bonds are financed by regular investors. And the return on investment that is offered here can be 8, 9, 10%. We see social impact bonds in different areas. In Israel, there are 2 social impact bonds already. One in the area of preventing diabetes. There is a problem that when people become diabetes, it's a very big liability on society because the treatment and everything is very costly, and we are a society of, the healthcare is paid by the society. So it's a very successful bond, and there is another bond that is covering for preventing from students to drop out of university. Because again, there are students that are coming to the university and then after a year or two they drop, and it creates a loss for the academic centers. And there are bonds in many areas. I found one bond in Mexico regarding empowerment of women. I'm not sure exactly what it does, but we can look it up later. But I know that the idea already came here, and I think that this is a very interesting idea. It's growing all over the world. I think there are hundreds of social impact bonds already. So this is another structure that you should know, I think. This is the diabetes. And then, to sum up, I will talk a little bit about impact investment, because I was doing everything that I told you, but back then I didn't know that what I was doing was impact investment. And in the last 2 or 3 years, this term started to grow. Are you familiar with the term impact investment? Okay, so impact investment basically is investing when your main purpose is not just maximizing profit, but you want also to create impact. There are different, I think that it's coming and it's becoming popular from a few reasons. There are a lot of researches about it. Some of it is because the funds that are managed by the millennials are starting to be invested in impact investment because they start to realize that there's no free meals. And when you are investing in a business that creates negative impact on the world, it can be on employment, it can be on the environment, it can be on different things. So at the end, somebody pays this price. This price is not for free. And they, especially when it comes to the environment, they think that they're going big time to pay the price of what our generation is doing to the environment. So they become more conscious, thank you, more conscious and, I'm sorry. What did I do? Okay, so this is impact investments. So we're looking for investing in ventures that are both for profit, for profit, but for impact too. Okay. It's still, when a trend is starting, so people are using words, and I'm not sure that all of this is right, but at least it looks like the money that is saying that is allocated to impact investment is growing and growing and growing by the billions, okay? So some of it is just wash, okay? Some of it is really, I'm not investing in cigarettes, in gambling, and in, I don't know, so I'm an impact investor. But some of it is starting to really invest in ventures that are doing the double bottom line or the triple bottom line as we call it. And in a way, it creates a new models of allowing social innovation to happen. Why? Okay, I need your help or somebody help. The areas in which impact investment is investing, it's very various and different. There are 17 targets that were described by the United Nations a couple of years ago, so many of the impact investment is going towards this direction. And, okay, and I think that this chart over there is also something interesting for you to look at. If you, okay, you can see it. The X is the social impact, and the Y is the financial returns on investment, right? Usually, when we invest regular money, we don't care for social impact at all, right? But sometimes we create social impact, and sometimes we don't create, but it can be like coincidence, not something that is intentional at all. Sometimes we invest for profit, and it's terrible. You see here in the bottom left side, it's something that doesn't create impact, and it doesn't even create return on investment. On the top left side is the regular investments. We want to look for money that mitigate risk, and sometimes it creates impact and sometimes no. On the bottom on the right is philanthropy. We are mainly looking for impact, and we are losing money. Intentionally, we know that we are about to lose money. The impact investment area is in the right top side, and it's also divided by impact first and financial first. And each one of them is a little bit different, but all of them are considered to be impact investment. And actually, okay, any questions about that? So, these are the goals that you can look afterwards, that the UN mentioned. And it's important, this impact investment, because it's developing a new language, a new mindset. I think in a way it changes the mindset of us as investors. When I was educated that the main purpose of a company is to maximize profit for its shareholders, and that the company should not think of anything else by debt. When I was sitting at the board of directors of companies that wanted to sell their assets, and there were two offers on the table, one higher than the other, but I knew that one will fire all the employees and the other will keep all of them. The lawyer in the room told me, you shouldn't consider this. This is not part of what you need to think. You only need to think of maximizing profit. We got used to it. We think that this is normal. The new trend of impact investment actually, I think in a way, helps us to connect between what is already connected in every one of us, because each one of us are both looking for money, but also we are looking for doing good. And in a way, it allows us to connect these two blocks in our brain together. It's a new language. It's a new mindset. I demonstrated to you that when we connect it and we blend the models of investing, so we manage to do things that we couldn't do otherwise. And these things are not helping just other people, but they mainly can help us, our communities, our societies. And I think that this is why it's important. It's also important because I think your children are going to talk with you about it someday or another, so you need to be prepared with that and to be prepared to answer what you did in this area when you had the opportunity. So I think that you cannot be blind to that. I think I can skip that. In Israel, it's growing as well. I think now they are talking about around $250 million. Not much, but it's a start, and it's growing in a small country like ours. These are the main players of this market, so if you came across them, so we have IVN, the fund that I used to manage. We have Dualis, which is a very similar fund. And we have Impact First investment, which usually mainly invest in technology-related impact investments. We have To Be Community Fund, and we have Bridges invested. Bridges raised $70 million and are already investing a lot of money in Israel. So this is how the ecosystem is growing in Israel. And of course, there's still a lot to be done, and we are still working on it. I mean, legislation, measurement, how we're going to measure it. And I think the most important thing is education. To start to talk about it, to make people understand that it exists, see different good examples of things that are happening around the world. So this is basically what I'm trying to do here in this meeting. So my call for action for you is to teach and research these new models and to move them from the academic periphery to the central. I think that's very important. And just to sum it up, so I think I started by telling you that I was chasing unicorns, right? And probably you're thinking if I found my unicorn. So I think that in my journey, I switched from searching for unicorns to searching for zebras. And the fact that now I'm looking for zebras is because zebras, first of all, they're not that rare. And zebras are resilient and they work in teams. And most importantly, I think, they are real. They're not imaginary like the... So I think that I envision a future where impact is integrated into all financial decisions and impact investment can lead us there. So thank you very much for listening. objections, angry, something, feedback. Negative is also acceptable.
To buy this idea, to be on this idea, because I think that will be like the challenge that Mexico can have. Yes.
I can tell you my story with IVN, because IVN was comprised of business people. And I think that the first time I presented to them the idea of create a blended fund of money that come from philanthropists and investors and government, they were against it. First of all, they said, what? Philanthropists will be willing to leverage investments of investors? Why should philanthropists put their money there? Second, they said, I am known for being a very good investor. I know to make a lot of money in my investment. If I invest in these ideas and they're not successful, it will hurt my prestige, okay? So there were a lot of objections, and it was a lot of educating the market in a way. And this is why I think that the key is first to talk about it, then to see examples, then to start really small, and to start to find your personal journey in this direction. But it's hard, and I think that I see a difference between older people and younger people, because older people, like myself, we grew up thinking really differently. I mean, it's not, younger people, I think, are already more and more exposed to this direct, and you can see it also in environment. You know, when I managed in Kur, so first in Israel, we didn't even understand why we need to care for the environment. I remember when a company from US came and they did a due diligence on environmental issues. We didn't understand whether, we had nothing like that in Israel, nothing. And then we moved to do like the minimum that we have to do in order to meet the regulations, right? We don't want to do more, but we will not. And then my child came to me at lunch and told me, you know, in school I studied that the world is, you know, warming, and there's not going to be water, and I'm going to die, and when I will be 60, I will not have water, and I will not have this, and what are you doing about it? So I think that when that started, so CEOs of companies started to think about it. Okay, this is not somebody else's problem. This is my problem. My child is talking with me about that. So it became personal. And I think that when social problems became personal to you, so you start to take them seriously. And you start to think in an innovative and serious way how you want to solve them.
Thank you.
Okay?
In the beginning, how do you change the mentality of the regular investor to this? How do you make them to think about the social impact instead of only thinking on the profit and the ROI they receive from this money?
So again, as I mentioned, I think the fact, for example, that Ronald Cohen is a leader in Israel, in the Israeli society, that is very meaningful. Because he's considered to be a major investor that made fortune in the world. And when he comes and he starts to talk about it, so people take, it's not like, you know, a hippie person that is coming from, I don't know, talking about love and, you know, kiss and hugs. It's a serious businessman that decided not to do philanthropy. He could have done philanthropy, but he understood that this is not a sustainable model. I mean, let's face it, the fact that governments are not solving social problems anymore, anywhere in the world. They don't have the capabilities, they don't have the money, they're not doing a good job. And I think that relying on them, it will not happen. And philanthropists, with all due respect, some of the things that they do are amazing, but there are many things that they are not willing to do because it's not in their scope. And also there is not that much money in it, because most of the money in the world is in the investment, in the business, in the companies. And if we continue to separate between what companies do and what the social do. So we will not have enough resources. We need to be able to engage all the companies, not in giving, in thinking of solutions. We need to engage the innovations for that. It's not just the money, it's not just CSR, corporate social responsibility, give a little here and there. That's not serious. I mean, you will not manage your entire company that way. You will not put a person who is not super poor. In India, for example, they made the rule that every company that is above $100 million turnaround has to allocate 5% of their turnover to impact. And when that law was in place, now this whole sector in India became so much more professional because now you measure, you look, you don't. I heard one of the prominent investors in Israel, I don't know if you know of him, Gigi Levy. He was the one who established and managed 888 gambling company. Made a lot of money, very big investor. He told me, when I started, so I looked for companies that only maximize profit. I didn't care what they do. Gambling, I didn't care. And when I looked at the philanthropy, I just, wanted to say, to be happy, to feel good. Today, he said, I'm thinking about it differently. And when I invest, there are some things I will not invest in, even if they are very lucrative. I'm just not investing. And when I look at philanthropy, even philanthropy, I ask the manager of the fund, of the non-for-profit, how will you make that next year I will not have to donate to you money anymore? I want them to show me their impact, their sustainability, because I take it seriously. So I think that if we will think that serious people are the ones that are doing these investments in serious mindset, that might help.
Thank you.
How can we reach these funds that invest in markets?
In Israel?
Yes.
I can help you. I mean, I can make connections. I can leave my card, you write me a mail, and I'll make introductions.
There's nobody in Mexico that represents.
Not that I know. Maybe there is. I don't know. So I don't want to say no, but I can also ask them if you're interested, if they have a representative in Mexico that I don't know of. But I guess if they had, they would have met you already because they would be looking for you.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you very much for having me.